When Prince Harry agreed to sit down with Piers Morgan, no one expected a calm conversation, least of all Piers himself. The tension between the outspoken host and the defiant prince had been simmering for years. And now, face to face under the sharp glow of studio lights, the air was thick with something volatile. What began as an interview was about to turn into a duel of words, one that would leave both men bruised and millions of viewers stunned. The set of Piers Morgan Uncensored was unusually quiet that night. The usual hum of backstage chatter had been replaced by a charged stillness, like the air before a storm. Piers sat upright, posture crisp, expression calm but alert. Across from him sat Prince Harry, dark navy suit, no tie, collar slightly open, that familiar scruff shadowing a face that looked equal parts tired and defiant. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He simply waited, hands clasped, eyes locked on his host. Piers leaned forward, his tone measured, balanced between cordial and cutting. "Your Royal Highness," he began. "Thank you for joining us. It's been quite some time since you've done an interview that wasn't curated." Harry smirked faintly. "Well, Piers," he said, "unlike you, I don't need to scream for relevance. I'm here because people want truth, not tabloid tantrums." A murmur rippled through the crew behind the cameras. Piers didn't flinch. His smile was thin, almost amused. "I see we're starting early tonight," he said lightly. "Let's talk about that truth then. You've said the media destroyed your piece, but you've also built a career speaking to them. How do you reconcile that?" Harry shifted in his chair, his confidence almost tangible. "Maybe I realized," he said slowly, "that if I don't tell my story, people like you will tell it for me and twist it." Piers nodded, tapping his pen against his notes. "Right, but isn't that convenient? You say you hate attention, yet you've given more interviews in the past 3 years than your entire family combined." Harry gave a short, humorless laugh. "I wouldn't expect you to understand balance, Piers. There's a difference between controlling your narrative and feeding the noise. You live off noise. I live off truth." The tension rose like heat. Piers leaned back, arms crossed, his gaze narrowing slightly. "Truth," he repeated. "Interesting word, coming from someone accused of rewriting history and his own book." Harry's jaw tightened. "I'm not rewriting anything," he snapped. "I'm correcting what people like you distorted. You call it rewriting. I call it reclaiming." The exchange was sharp and relentless, every line like a jab. Piers, usually the one in control, found himself towing a line between civility and confrontation. Harry's posture, his smirks, his deliberate pauses, they grated. "Let's talk about family," Piers said, turning a page. "You've said you want reconciliation. Yet every move, the interviews, the memoir, the Netflix deal, seems to burn bridges faster than they can be rebuilt. Do you think you've done anything to repair the damage?" Harry raised an eyebrow. "Repair?" he echoed. "I'm not the one who broke it. But sure, let's pretend it's all my fault. That's what your viewers want, isn't it? The poor prince who ran away. Ungrateful and delusional." Piers's tone dropped, calm but edged. "I think people just want honesty. You talk about healing, but your actions cause more division. Even now, you've come in with the same arrogance people accuse you of." Harry smiled thinly, almost tauntingly. "I don't need to be liked, Piers. And I don't need to explain myself to people who've built careers criticizing me." For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and electric. Piers stared at him steadily. Harry stared back, cool, unbothered. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a standoff. Finally, Piers spoke, quieter now, but with unmistakable bite. "You do realize, don't you, that this sarcasm, this deflection, is exactly what turns people against you?" Harry shrugged. "I'm not here to make friends," he said coldly. "I'm here to tell the truth, my truth. If people can't handle that, that's their problem." Piers exhaled slowly, disbelief flickering across his face. The polite opening act was over. The real fight was beginning. He straightened his papers, then set them aside. "All right," he said evenly. "Let's get into your truth, shall we?" The studio clock blinked its indifferent digits as the air grew heavier. Piers glanced once more at his notes, then pushed them away entirely. "Let's talk specifics," he said. You say the press hunted you and your wife. You claim the institution failed to protect you. Yet you pursued multi-million-dollar media deals, a podcast, a docuseries, a tell-all memoir. Help me understand the contradiction. Harry's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. It's only a contradiction if you don't understand the difference between exploitation and authorship, he said. I'm not auditioning for your approval. I'm correcting a record that's been hostile for years. Piers tilted his head. Is that what happened in your book? He asked quietly. The air between them went still. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Correction or catharsis? Piers asked, his voice low but edged with challenge. Because to many readers, your book didn't feel like setting the record straight. It felt like setting your family on fire. Harry leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced loosely over his lap. And there it is, he said dryly. You want contrition for the crime of telling the truth. Sorry, not happening. Piers didn't blink. No one asked for contrition. I'm asking for clarity. You say you want reconciliation, but nearly every public move you make pushes it further away. Why sign up for another televised sit-down if peace is truly the goal? Harry's tone sharpened. Because peace doesn't come from pretending the bruises aren't there. And yet, Piers countered evenly, most people don't heal a family fracture by performing it for cameras. The room went still. Even the crew behind the lenses froze, as if any sound might crack the tension hanging between them. Harry tilted his head. You're not exactly a marriage counselor, are you, Piers? No, Piers said, calm as winter light. I'm a broadcaster who asks obvious questions you refuse to answer. Harry chuckled, a low, humorless sound. Obvious to you doesn't mean intelligent. Then let's try intelligent, Piers said, leaning in slightly. You've claimed the British press is racist and cruel. Many agree about the cruelty. We've all seen it. But when you paint with a roller instead of a brush, you condemn millions who read or work in media responsibly. So tell me, are all critics bigots, or do you just dislike criticism? Harry's expression cooled. When you've lived what I've lived, he said evenly, you learn which patterns matter. I don't need to pass your exam. It's not an exam, Piers replied quietly. It's accountability. A light hummed faintly overhead. The silence between them pulsed. Harry leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Accountability? From the man who's made a career calling people hypocrites for ratings? That's rich. Piers let the jab pass, folding his hands over his notes. You've spoken often about safety, privacy, and dignity, he said. All fair concerns. But you've also launched a global campaign around your private grievances, then bristled when people respond. So which is it, privacy or prime time? I'm seeking fairness, Harry shot back. You keep acting as if telling my story forfeits my humanity. It doesn't. I'm not a prop for your nostalgia about a family that eats its wounds with silver cutlery. Piers raised an eyebrow. And yet, you sell those wounds by the page. Harry's smile hardened. Better I sell them than let you steal them. A beat. Then Piers shifted the conversation. Let's talk about service, he said. You've claimed you still serve the public, just differently. But you've also monetized nearly every inch of your narrative. Where does service end and brand begin? Harry's tone was crisp. Service isn't defined by a building in Westminster or a crest on stationery. It's defined by impact. Then show us, Piers said. Not the sizzle reel, the substance. What measurable outcomes are you proudest of, beyond awareness and applause? Harry blinked, irritation flickering. I don't need to present a spreadsheet for you. You're the one calling your work a mission, Piers replied. And a mission is measurable. Otherwise, it's marketing. Harry stared at him, somewhere between restraint and explosion. You want numbers, Piers? Fine. Programs funded, veterans treated, scholarships created, they exist, even if your show refuses to see them. My team requested documentation from your foundation this week, Piers said, tapping a folder he hadn't opened. We received a one-page list of talking points and no audited figures. Harry's jaw tightened. So now you're an accountant. I'm a journalist, Piers said flatly. And journalists ask for receipts. You invited the scrutiny when you made Impact your headline. For the first time, Harry's voice thinned, a crack beneath the composure. You think you can bury me in paperwork to avoid the real conversation? I think paperwork is the real conversation, Piers replied. When money and moral authority are both on the line. Harry exhaled slowly, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from his jacket. What's your next trick, Piers? Drag my wife into it? You lot always do when you're losing the plot. Piers's gaze didn't waver. I'm not dragging anyone. But Meghan is central to your public story. It's fair to ask how that partnership shapes your choices. Harry laughed, bright and cold. Ah, there she is, the specter you can't resist. Say her name, spike your ratings. You should be paying us royalties. I'm not bringing her up to provoke, Piers said. I'm bringing her up because you do. Constantly. You frame shared decisions as solitary righteousness, then bristle when asked about the team behind them. Team, Harry repeated sharply. You mean marriage? Partnership? Something you apparently can't understand unless it's scheduled for broadcast. Marriage, Piers agreed evenly, is exactly why the public judges both of you when you ask them to accept your story as gospel. The silence that followed wasn't calm. It was charged. Neither man blinked. The cameras rolled, capturing two versions of conviction locked in collision. Harry's eyes flashed. We didn't ask to be adopted by anyone, he said tightly. We asked to be left alone. Piers gave a small, incredulous smile. On a global broadcast watched by tens of millions, you keep saying, leave us alone, into the loudest microphone you can find. That did it. The thin thread of Harry's patience snapped. What do you want, Piers? A confession? A capitulation? Should I kneel at the altar of your audience and beg forgiveness for not playing mascot anymore? I want an honest answer to a simple question, Piers said, his voice firming. Why should people believe you're fighting for principle when your every move is packaged for profit? Harry leaned back, letting the silence stretch before speaking. When he did, his tone was soft but cutting. People should believe me because I've paid for the truth, in blood, in sleep, in family. Because I walked away from an inheritance to become a person. You call that branding. I call it breathing. Piers let the words hang before answering gently. And yet you didn't walk away from the spotlight that came with that inheritance. You carried it with you and tried to rent it out. Harry's lips parted, then closed again. The cameras fed on the tension, hungry for each flicker of restraint. I think we're done with your circular sermons, Harry said at last. Ask a real question, or admit you're just performing resentment for clicks. Piers' expression cooled, his tone lowering to surgical precision. Fine, a real question then. Do you regret anything? Any choice, any word, any grievance aired, anything you'd take back for the sake of the people you still claim to love? Harry folded his arms, chin lifting, eyes burning with disdain. I regret underestimating how fragile the British media's ego is. Beyond that, no. Not one sentence? Piers pressed. Not one private detail that didn't need to be public? Not one that wasn't already being sold, Harry replied. I just stopped letting other people invoice my life. Piers nodded slowly, almost to himself. That will sound brave to some, he said. And breathtakingly self-serving to others? Harry's mouth curved. Lucky for me, others don't get a vote. And yet, Piers countered, they're the public whose respect you say you want. I never said I wanted respect, Harry shot back. I said I wanted fairness. Respect is optional. Fairness isn't. Piers leaned back, his chair giving a soft sigh. You've asked for fairness while offering very little of it tonight. To your family, to the audience, even to me. You came armed with contempt and called it candor. Harry's eyes hardened to flint. And you came armed with old grudges and called it journalism. A red tally light blinked on and off as a camera refocused. Someone coughed. The room felt like a lit match hovering over dry leaves. Piers gathered his notes, aligning the pages he no longer needed. All right, he said evenly. Let's take a brief break. Harry gave a short, derisive snort. Need a moment to regroup? No, Piers replied, calm and unhurried. I want to use the next segment to talk about veterans' issues, security, and the charities you've mentioned. I'll give you every chance to be precise. Harry's stare didn't soften. Precision's wasted on people who prefer outrage. Then surprise us, Piers said. Choose precision. The floor manager began a silent countdown. The lights dimmed slightly. Music swelled and faded as the show slipped to commercial. Harry leaned forward just enough for Piers to hear him. You think you can pin me to your storyboard? He murmured. Piers didn't look away. I don't need to pin you, he said quietly. I just need you to keep telling us who you are. The break ended. The red light blinked back to life. The interview resumed, with questions sharp enough to slice paper. What they would cut next wouldn't be paper. The third segment opened on a close-up of Harry's face, the studio lights catching the faint sheen of irritation that had replaced his earlier composure. Piers sat upright, calm, steady, eyes honed to a scalpel's edge. Less interviewer now, more surgeon. Welcome back, he said smoothly, voice composed. We've covered your views on media, privacy, and your ongoing public role. Let's shift now to accountability. Harry arched an eyebrow, his smile sharp. Oh, here we go. Piers ignored the jab. You've said you want to inspire change. But when critics point out contradictions like demanding privacy while signing multi-million-dollar content deals, you call them hateful. Is it possible some criticism is simply warranted? Harry leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, the faintest smirk returning as the storm gathered again. Piers, you seem fixated on this privacy argument. Maybe that's because your entire profession survives on violating it. Harry's tone was cutting. You've built a career on gossip, not journalism. Piers's expression barely moved, though a flicker of tension tightened his jaw. I ask questions for a living, Your Royal Highness, he replied evenly. That's not gossip. That's accountability. And I think most viewers would agree that the man who published a memoir airing every family argument isn't exactly camera shy. Harry gave a short, humorless laugh. A memoir, yes, not propaganda. I told the truth. You might try that sometime. For a moment, Piers simply regarded him, calm, weighing the next incision. Then he said quietly, Let's talk about responsibility. You've criticized your father, your brother, the institution itself, but I haven't once heard you express regret. Do you ever consider the human cost of what you've said? Harry exhaled, the ghost of a smirk tugging at his mouth. Human cost? Please, Piers, you speak as though honesty is violence. I didn't cause the damage. I exposed it. And yet, Piers countered softly, you've hurt the people you claim to love. That's not revelation, that's collateral. Harry laughed, sharp, derisive. You're very dramatic, aren't you? I suppose that's what keeps your show alive. You need conflict to stay relevant. Conflict? Piers asked, voice steady. You've brought plenty yourself tonight. All I've done is ask you to explain your own words. I don't need to explain anything, Harry snapped. Not to you, not to anyone. You wouldn't understand the kind of pressure that comes with being me. Pressure? Piers leaned forward slightly. You mean the kind cushioned by privilege, security, and a platform most people could only dream of? Forgive me, but millions manage pressure with far less complaining. Harry's eyes flared. Oh, so it's a competition of suffering now? You're really showing your colors, Piers. This is what happens when someone dares to leave their gilded cage. People like you can't stand it. Leaving the cage, Piers said evenly, is one thing. Setting it on fire and blaming the builders is another. For the first time, Harry's smirk faltered. The silence stretched, heavy with static. Tell me something, Piers continued, tone low but precise. Do you ever wonder if you've become the very thing you claim to despise? You say you hate the media circus, but you feed it every time you sit down like this. Every time you sell another version of your story. Harry leaned forward, voice edged with mockery. You think you're clever, don't you? You keep trying to trap me in your little logic games. But I'm not the villain here. I'm the one who finally stopped pretending everything was fine. And yet, Piers said, firmer now, everything about your tone tonight suggests you think you're above everyone else. Every question I've asked, you've dodged or turned into an insult. You call yourself a truth-teller, but you can't handle a question without condescension. I can handle questions just fine, Harry shot back. I just don't respect yours. That landed like a slap in the quiet studio. Piers blinked once, the smallest fracture in composure, then smiled faintly. All right, he said. Let's make it simple. You've called the monarchy outdated and oppressive, yet you still use your royal title, profit from it, and demand the privileges it brings. Isn't that hypocrisy? Harry's smile vanished. His voice dropped low. I'm not responsible for how the media or the monarchy label me. If people use my title, that's on them. I've moved on. Moved on? Piers raised an eyebrow. You're here talking about it, aren't you? Harry's jaw tightened. You just don't get it. I'm not here because of my title. I'm here in spite of it. You think it defines me? That's your obsession, not mine. Piers leaned in slightly. You've built an empire on escaping it. You've monetized your rebellion. That's not freedom, Harry, that's marketing. Harry's hand came down hard on the armrest. You don't know what you're talking about, he snapped. You've never lived with that kind of scrutiny. Every moment dissected, every headline turned into a weapon. You pretend to understand, but you don't. You never could. You're right, Piers said quietly. I can't understand that kind of privilege, but I do understand accountability. For 3 years you've blamed everyone else, your family, the press, the institution, and never once yourself. That's not courage, Harry. That's cowardice wrapped in self-pity. Harry sat up straighter, his eyes cold as steel. The space between them felt like the moment before lightning strikes. You think you can talk to me like that just because I'm sitting in your studio? Harry's voice cracked through the silence like glass. You think you have the right to lecture me about courage? Piers didn't so much as blink. No, he said evenly, but I do have the right to hold you to the same standard as anyone else who chooses to live in the spotlight. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. The red recording light pulsed in the corner like a slow heartbeat. Harry leaned forward, voice low and venomous. You know what, Piers? You're just another man hiding behind a desk because you're too afraid to live a real life. You talk about accountability, but your career is built on mocking people braver than you'll ever be. Piers remained still, unflinching. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm, but icy. And your career, Harry, seems built on burning bridges and calling it honesty. Harry started to respond, but stopped. Just for a moment, something flickered behind his eyes. A crack, a hesitation. He'd pushed too far, and he knew it. Piers glanced briefly toward the producer behind the glass, then back at Harry. We'll take another short break, he said evenly. When we return, we'll talk about integrity, assuming there's any left in the room. Harry's jaw tightened. You really think you can intimidate me? Piers smiled faintly. No, Your Highness. You're doing that all on your own. The lights dimmed for the commercial, but the tension in the studio stayed locked in place, dense and electric. Everyone knew the next segment would decide how this ended, and that one of them wouldn't walk away unscathed. When the red light blinked back on, the illusion of civility was gone. The silence before Piers spoke was not calm. It was charged, like the air just before thunder breaks. He adjusted his cuff, then looked squarely at Harry. His voice was polite, precise, and razor-sharp. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Prince Harry, a man who's redefined what it means to live publicly while demanding privacy. Let's see if there's any common ground left before the night's over. Harry didn't smile. His posture was stiff, his expression carved in disdain. I doubt we'll find any, Piers. You live in a world that feeds on controversy. I live in one that survives it. Piers gave a quiet, humorless laugh. Well, you certainly know how to create it. Harry leaned forward, his voice tightening. You invited me here to talk, not to be insulted. I've insulted no one, Piers said coolly. I've asked questions you refuse to answer. Questions built on bias, Harry shot back. You came into this wanting a fight. I just didn't realize how desperate you were to get one. Desperate, Piers repeated softly. No, just tired. Tired of watching a man who's been given every privilege on earth spend every interview pretending to be its victim. The words hit hard. Harry froze, nostrils flaring, the muscles in his jaw tightening. He looked like he might laugh it off, but didn't. You know nothing about my life, he snapped. You sit behind that desk spewing venom about people you'll never understand. I had to rebuild everything from scratch. You wouldn't last a week in my shoes. Piers's reply was quiet, deliberate. And yet you spend every day talking about them. Maybe stop polishing the shoes and start walking forward. Harry's hand slammed against the armrest, the sound sharp in the still room. You think you can talk to me like that because you're hiding behind a camera? You're a coward, Piers. You've built a career tearing people down, and you can't stand it when someone pushes back. The studio froze. Behind the glass, a producer mouthed, "Cut it," but Piers raised a hand. No, he said quietly. Let it play out. I don't tear people down, Harry, Piers said, his voice measured but cutting. I hold them accountable. There's a difference. The only reason you think you're being attacked is because you've surrounded yourself with yes men for years. Harry's mouth twisted into a sneer. Accountable to who? You? The same man who mocked my wife, my family, my choices on national television? Please, you wouldn't recognize accountability if it stared back at you in the mirror. Careful, Piers said softly, a warning under the calm. Or what? Harry shot back. You'll lecture me about respect? Spare me the sermon, Piers. I'm not one of your tabloid puppets. I don't need your approval. No, Piers said, his tone cooling further. But you clearly need an audience. That did it. Harry leaned forward sharply, voice raised. You invited me here to humiliate me. That's all this was. Another cheap stunt for views. Piers didn't flinch. You came here to play the victim. I just gave you a stage big enough to prove it. Harry's face hardened, disbelief and fury colliding. You're unbelievable, he hissed. You twist everything. Every time someone tries to tell the truth, people like you, people like me. Piers cut in, his tone suddenly firm, almost surgical. You mean journalists who don't let you script the story? Who won't let you weaponize trauma for sympathy? Harry's eyes blazed. You're disgusting. You think empathy is weakness because you've never had any. And you think arrogance is strength, Piers fired back, because it hides how lost you really are. For the first time all night, Harry went silent. His lips parted, but no words came. The fury in his expression wasn't just anger, it was pride, cracked and bleeding. Piers straightened the papers in front of him, though everyone knew he wasn't reading anymore. I thought maybe, he said slowly, there was something left here. A glimpse of humility, a shred of accountability. Something to remind people why they once respected you. But all you've shown tonight is contempt toward your family, the public, anyone who dares to question you. Harry stood abruptly, tugging at his microphone cord. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. You're right, Piers said calmly. You don't. Harry froze, eyes narrowing. The red light stayed on. Neither man moved. The war was now silent, but far from over. What's that supposed to mean? Harry demanded, voice tight with disbelief. It means, Piers said, turning slightly toward the cameras, that this interview is over, because I don't reward arrogance with airtime. If you can't handle a civil conversation without turning it into a tantrum, then you don't belong on this show. A ripple of shock passed through the studio. Even the camera operator froze mid-motion. Harry's mouth fell open. Are you kicking me off your show? Yes, Piers replied, unflinching. Respect is a two-way street, and you've blocked every lane. Harry's face flushed crimson, his hands curling into fists. "You'll regret this, Piers. You always regret going against me." Piers gave a faint, knowing smile. "I doubt it. But I think the world's seen enough for one evening, don't you?" Harry stared at him, trembling with fury, then ripped off his microphone with a sharp motion. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "You invite me here to insult me, then pretend you're the victim." "I'm not pretending anything," Piers said calmly, standing as well. "I'm doing my job." "You just couldn't handle someone who wasn't afraid of you." Harry glared, breathing hard. "You're just another sad man clinging to relevance by attacking people more important than you." "And you," Piers replied evenly, his tone like ice, "are just another man mistaking fame for virtue." That landed like a gavel. Harry's eyes narrowed, then he turned sharply, muttering something under his breath that mercifully the microphones didn't catch. A moment later, the studio door slammed behind him. The echo hung in the air. Piers remained where he was, composed, steady, every inch the professional reclaiming control. He turned back to the camera, his trademark sardonic smile returning like nothing had happened. "Well," he said quietly, "I think that's a good place to stop. I'd like to thank Prince Harry for his time, what little of it we had, and thank you, our viewers, for joining us tonight. We'll be right back after the break." The red recording light clicked off, but the tension didn't. No one in the studio moved. For a long beat, silence reigned. Then Piers exhaled slowly and muttered under his breath, almost amused, "Well, that was bound to happen." He glanced toward the still stunned crew and added wryly, "What do you think? Was I too harsh or did he go too far?" A small smirk returned as he turned away from the camera. "Either way," he murmured, "ratings just went through the roof."